Well, Dr. Tawari, if you're ready, I think it is time to rock and roll. We've got the recording spot hit it. We're good to go. Let's do day 3.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Welcome back, everyone, for the last day of the conference. It's been exciting 2 days. We've had some really good events and some really good sessions in the last 2 days with our themes of development and awareness. And yesterday was a great day with development. And today, obviously, we march into action, which is kind of our, just wrap up event, but a very important event. So our theme today, as you know, is action, and the objectives of the day is to identify future action steps for climate change education in the local community, as well as to evaluate the utility of content connection innovations in my local context. So really, we have a few things going on today, which are some really exciting events. We first have a quick icebreaker, like we have done in the past couple of days. And then we have a very wonderful keynote speaker today, and I'll let Dr. Foster introduce them to you in just a minute here. And then we have some lightning presentations, which I'm really excited about from our participants on for the climate change curriculum challenge. So I think now it's time for us to get into breakout rooms for the icebreaker session, and I'll just hand it over to Carson from here.
When you break out your friends there, you had this big question here: how can my students engage locally in climate change, global climate change education? Which there's some keywords in there. And you had just a few from us to kind of like get the juices flowing, right? Because we want to be at our best with creativity and innovation, with the adventure that we have ahead of us as professionals in the next hour and a half that we have. So we got to get those juices flowing. I always tell people, it's just like when all of us for our summer grilling, you go out there. Now, if I pick that good piece of steak, that T-bone, we're going to enjoy this. So we've rubbed it in, we've marinated it maybe, all the things we do. I'm not going to just go throw that nice hunk of American beef on the grill without preheating the grill first. You got to make sure it's ready to get it just right. Well, this is what we're doing. We're preheating those mental grills to make sure that you're ready for that prime, perfect, great, exciting keynote talk that we're about to have. So I want to hear where you're at, and I want to make sure everybody can see you in here. I said, hey, let's get ready. I'm going to pull 2 or 3. So I need you to help me out. Show me that you're quick on the trigger. Raise that hand. And then I'm going to call on you to share out what your group said or what you thought was that you thought. Never allow people who know your entire life and every time you make a mistake to be involved when you're opening up stuff, because they just come at you with everything at the same time. So who's going to raise their hand and let us know what you heard or what you believe from your breakout group in the icebreaker this morning? I'm looking at the list. Take a deep breath. Waiting for one of those beautiful yellow hands or to show up that cues you to the top of the list so I can spotlight you. Having to do that awkward thing where I wait you out. Oh man, feel the pain. Everybody enjoys my awkwardness, my sense of tension of who's going to have the. Thank you, Arlie. See, someone else. Arlie, you're here. Talk to us. What did you hear with the prompt of how can my students engage locally in global climate change education?
Well, I'm going to be real honest. It was not my idea, because I came into it with the whole aspect of, I get hung up on the word global, but some of the individuals in my room, and I'm going to call out Callie and Jessica, like they talked about like bringing it back and talking with students about how maybe their grandparents or how their local farming practices in rural America have had to change, maybe how their grandparents farmed as opposed to the farming practices that they're implementing now due to changes within our climate. So, over the last 50 to 100 years, what are we doing differently? And some of that can even talk about conservation measures and the whole shebang, how creeks or rivers have changed over the courses of years, etc. So bringing it back about how things have changed locally, because like I say, I get hung up on that term global and think my kids in rural America are not going to understand like things that have changed in Africa or wherever, because maybe they've never left rural Kentucky. But when we can talk about how things have changed locally, then that helps them to understand better.
I love it. Thank you for raising your hand. I appreciate you sharing it. And that is a challenge that we have, is how can we build the empathy and connections when we think about climate issues of probably not recognizing political or geographic borders. So excellent. Okay. Who's next? Bring it to me. One more brave person to raise their hand and share something good and awesome you heard and that you want to put out there on the question.
I'll go. I don't have enough sense to raise my hand. I don't know how to do that.
That's okay. I see you, Carly, and I'm putting you on the spotlight. What you got for me, buddy?
Spotlight. So I'm in Johnson City. I just at Daniel Boone, where Will is just, right down the road in Johnson City. And so it's hard for us to visibly really see an impact in the short term here because we're in the middle of an area that was, we're not near the coast and we're not near a lot of places where you can really visibly see. But we do some research on extreme weather events and flooding, which has happened, certainly in places pretty close to here. And then we talked about also, I actually take kids out to a place in the mountains just every year, except for the last two, where we can see impacts of invasive species, particularly hemlock woolly adelgid, because we have a lot of hemlocks here. We're in the mountains, so it's all the way up to Pennsylvania. It's a really big issue, and so that we can tie that in to a global picture of stuff that's happening and how easy it is to particularly move diseases and insect pests around, and we can tie that back into some climate change issues. And then we also talked about someone watched a lot of documentaries, and then kids also can do research on those weather events. So that's kind of some stuff that I do.
Carly, I like that. I tell you what, I did not connect that you were at Johnson City. I've been in your high school ag room at Daniel Boone. I stopped in there, talked to Jason Dossett and the parliamentary procedure team once a few years ago.
I was there. I remember you all being there. Jason's gone down to Cookville now, but I remember you guys being there. So I was
anyway, that was fun. I apologize for not having that click right away, but it is a small world. And yeah. I appreciate you raising your hand and sharing. Guys, when we talk about it being a small world, I think that's probably why I get so passionate about the idea that more so than any piece of lesson resource material, more so than any documentary even, like the most powerful thing that we have is our community of practice, like of knowing that it's the spin, it's the touch, it's talking to someone who's a practitioner and saying, hey, together, how can we teach this better? How can we engage? How can we support and lift each other up? That's why when I prepare to introduce you to the keynote, the most important introduction I can make is that she is a teacher. That's the most powerful thing that I can say about anybody, that they are a teacher, an educator. And I am very excited to say is becoming a friend. Like that's what I've had fun with. We've had a chance for the past year and a half because of shared interests to work with Jennifer Williams. And I'm not going to break through everything that she's done. I'm going to hit some of the highlights and get out of the way because we're just going to have fun. Like I told you and prepped you yesterday, this will not be a passive experience. We're going to get to have fun as teachers with a teacher as we explore our role in advancing this knowledge. Now, Jennifer is the co-founder of an NGO called Teach SDGs. And as you know, SDG stands for Sustainable Development Goals from the UN, right? There were 17 of them, the world's strategic plan. But what Jennifer figured out and her friends figured out is that if we're going to make this happen, we better leverage and activate the teachers of the world, the influencers, the change agents. Those are the ones that will inspire the generation and make change happen in communities to address them. So it's a volunteer organization that helps with resources in K-12 classrooms to contribute to those goals, to complete their help with their completion and success. For that, it's supposed to be done by 2030. So TikTok for all of us of how can we get things done. Now, specifically, she also is the current executive director of Take Action Global. Thus our theme of action today and why she was the perfect speaker for this day. And this organization focuses on providing resources that on climate change and environmentalism. In fact, there is and I wanted to make sure that I got this right, there is the Climate Action Project, and I have no doubt that she's going to mention it at some point, but I want you to hear this. The Climate Action Project, actually, Jennifer, I should probably ask, when did the Climate Action Project actually start? Because it's pretty new.
We're heading into year 5.
Year 5. And in that 5 years, the Climate Action Project has connected students from 64 countries in over 250 schools. And I just think that that's really impressive. And so I am excited to introduce you to my friend Jennifer Williams. I am hoping that you enjoy it as much as I do, and that together we all learn and leave inspired to take these curriculum projects you're developing, taking these ideas, take those tools and say, all right, I'm going to be the instigator and catalyst for change in my school, with my students, and in my community. So Jennifer, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Daniel. I like that word, instigator. I'm all about let's cause some disruption. So you'll also be hearing me say that word action a lot today. So I was thrilled to be invited to join for day 3, which, as I hear, is all about action, and is a word very close to my heart. So we'll be talking about action and ways you can activate and be an instigator in your local communities, and also connected with a global community, as you all are building that right here with this class network. So we're going to be together for about the next hour and a half, and we are going to be exploring some different projects, some different examples of classrooms from around the world who are doing the work. Many of them doing the work with very little resources. And I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite ed tech tools as well. And we're going to play with those and explore as we go along. So just as Daniel mentioned, it will not be a passive experience. I hope that we can get in, have fun together. We're going to do a little bit of collaboration. And if at any time you have questions, or maybe if I'm sharing on something that you want to know a little bit more about, please feel free to stop me and I can elaborate. Just to let you know too, everything that I share today, number 1 is free, and number 2, I will share with you with a digital toolkit document. So I'll share my presentation. We're going to be co-creating some boards together, so you'll have access to all of that information, because we're going to have this brain trust where we dump information into some digital spaces. So we'll have access to all of those ideas after today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to share my full desktop because we might move around just a little bit. And let me get us here. And I'll share this presentation deck as well as we go along. So we're going to be talking about climate education, which is really, my background started in literacy. I'm a literacy specialist, speech language pathologist by trade. I'm a professor now in the College of Ed. And so I am all about pedagogy and communication and creative expression. So climate is very new for me in the past few years, but really this movement of our students in becoming so passionate about taking action for the planet has guided me. So I've learned from the young people of our world, and I'm continuing to learn from them every single day. So we have a couple different goals today that we'll be hitting on in our talk. So content connections, global networks, climate education, and education. Daniel mentioned the SDGs. If you're not yet familiar with the global goals, SDGs stands for Sustainable Development Goals, sometimes known as the global goals, sometimes known as the goals. Then we're going to be talking about those today, so you'll get to know them if you don't know them yet. And then I'm planning on leaving you with lots of resources that you can continue to access after our time together today. I'd love to stay in contact too. So I'm very active on social media. I say Twitter, every opportunity, friendship, relationship, new idea comes to me, can kind of be stemmed back to Twitter in a way. So I'd love to connect there. My Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn is all Jen Williams EDU. And I also have my website, jenwilliamsedu.com. You'll see here a couple things I love. So Teach SDGs is our global network of educators bringing the Sustainable Development Goals to classrooms. And I'll share more about how you can get involved if you're interested in those efforts. TAG, Take Action Global, is our nonprofit. So we're doing work around climate action and climate education. And then Teach Boldly is my book with ISTE. So ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education. So there are those connections with ed tech and social good. All right. So before we dive in, I'd love to hear from you. And I loved that I was able to join in a little bit early and hear some of your ideas, where you all are coming from. I hear most of you are in secondary education, so perfect. We're going to talk a lot about ways we can engage our older K-12 students. But I'd love to start with this activity that I do in the classroom. I mentioned a lot of the things I do really free, financially free, and resource free. So this is something that doesn't cost anything. You don't need anything. And it's a practice out of University of Pennsylvania at the Center for Positive Psychology. And so it's called 3 Good Things. And this is a practice that you can do each day. You can guide your students to do. I do this a lot in terms of the work I do, because I'm talking about things like climate change, which sometimes can bring negative emotion. So I'm trying to start the conversation through positive thinking. So 3 good things, and I'll guide you through this activity. All you need to do is write down 3 good things that happened to you today. Now, this is really hard for me. I don't mind thinking quickly on 3 good things, but the actually activity of writing is like brutal. So I always struggle with it, but that's a key to success. So writing down 3 good things that happened today. So I'll give you an opportunity to go ahead and do that. All right. So as you're doing it, if you're writing it on a piece of paper, I'd like you to take one of those 3 good things that happened to you today and add it to our chat box. So I'm going to model that. Let me access our chat box here and that with one of my interns who is joining back for the summer and felt very hopeful. So what I like to do is write with my 3 good things, how that made me feel. Okay. And so if you want to add in one of your 3 good things into the chat box, that would be great. Another thing that's important after you write your 3 good things is to take a moment and reread those. So reread those, think about the way they make you feel. This will, as you can see here on the slide, help to cultivate gratitude, increase optimism, and boost happiness, which is something, why not? We all want that right now in our classrooms and on our lives. So I can see here that we have lots of good things coming in. Daniel had a great workout, earn it, break a sweat, made me feel energized. Awesome that you fit in a workout in these busy days I know you have. So that's actually taking action. Carson has perfect weather for his morning run, provided by some calm. Michael found an external drive that I misplaced last night. That made me feel relieved. So I love that emotion of that you're sharing here of relief. Will took a morning walk to enjoy the cool weather. Brianna woke up in a nice Airbnb, which I know in Naples. Rachna, day 3 for the class conference makes me feel hopeful and excited. So you can read other people as they're sharing their good news, good things that happened to them today. Okay. Something else that makes me feel happy is this framework that comes out of IDEO in the Bay Area in California. And it's called human-centered design. Now, I had come across human-centered design several years ago in work I was doing around design thinking. So if you're familiar with the process of design thinking, a 5-phase approach to problem solving, this may look a little familiar to you. So this is a similar framework, a 3-phase approach to problem solving based all around our humans. So you'll see the first phase is inspiration, then we move into ideation, and then we conclude in this first part with implementation. What I also love is that it keeps going. So it looks like that roller coaster that doesn't end, because we're going to move after the implementation phase right back into inspiration. A couple other differences compared to traditional educational design is that we spend a lot of time in the inspiration phase. So inspiration phase, we're noticing, we're pausing, we're observing what is happening. Then after we're inspired with what is happening in our world, we move into ideation, which becomes very messy. We throw out all these different ideas and find connections, possibilities. which then brings us into implementation. So spending a great deal of time in this first phase, then moving into ideating into final phase of implementation. So I use human-centered design pretty much with everything I do. So if I'm doing a keynote talk, if I'm writing a blog post, if I am doing a lesson plan, if I'm creating a global project for students around the world, I'm moving them through these 3 phases. So we're going to use this today as we go through in our conversation. Starting with inspiration, I'm going to share some stories and give you a little bit of background on how I came to this conversation of climate education. So, as I mentioned in the chat, I am an educator here in Florida. So I had started off on the science side of education in K-12 as a speech language pathologist. I then moved into a Montessori world school that didn't have as much need for therapy, but did have a lot of need for reading support. So I became a reading specialist. I started to design out curricula. I was a classroom teacher, school principal. And in this school, I had been myself a student and then trained as a very traditional educator. And so learning was kind of compartmentalized. It was very much based on extrinsic motivation, things like grades and test scores. And so Montessori opened up my eyes to this new way of teaching and learning. One that was guided by intrinsic motivation, that prioritized the peace curriculum as much as it did with language and with math. We brought in cultural studies and focused on geography right about the same time, where in Florida, geography was being removed from traditional programs. We had an organic garden that was supplying our cafeteria. We had a farm for PE, so our students were riding horses every day. And it was this utopic environment. We were also innovators. And so we were early adopters with technology. So back in about 2009, we were at the start of the iPad boom. So we had iPads 1-to-1 in all of our classes, ages 4 through 8th grade. So not really having a guidebook or really a PLN on spaces like Twitter, so a professional learning network, we looked to our mission. So we were a world school, so building global competencies was at the center of all we were doing. So we decided to use our iPads for that purpose. We connected our classrooms in our school to students around the world. We then found that those connections were going to guide our international travel. So we were traveling to places like Russia and Spain and China and working with students different from now, where we can jump into Twitter and say, hey, is there anyone in Mexico available for a Zoom call tomorrow? It would take many months. So we'd have to contact ministries of education and find a school that had Wi-Fi and teachers willing to take risks. So it took quite a while. So this really helped me to understand that the work we had been doing, and I know today we're here to talk about local to global connections and ways we can take action. So I really felt like we were checking the boxes. We were investigating the world, we were recognizing perspectives, we were communicating ideas, we were bringing in holidays and clothing and food, and we were having our students do these virtual exchanges through Skype at the time. But until I came across this framework offered by the Asia Society, probably I came across it in about 2012, maybe 2013. But this final pillar of take action, I realized my students weren't really learning for the world. They maybe were learning with the world, but they were just moving through scenarios. We had moved from teachers in the front of the room to not just having students consume information, we were having them create, but we weren't moving them to that next level of taking action for a purpose. So this changed everything for me. So in 2014, I moved out of K-12 and moved to higher ed, and I started working with classrooms around the world. And I was going out and saying, this idea of global competencies and global connections and having students create for a purpose, this is what we need to be doing. And teachers at the time really weren't seeing themselves in this conversation. A lot of them were saying to me, that's fantastic. I'm happy to hear that's happening, but we have our own issues. We have standardized tests we need to make sure we're hitting. We have parent needs. We have overpopulated classrooms. And it wasn't surprising because we as teachers aren't traditionally trained in this concept of social good. Social good really reserved more for the profession of social work. So we look to social work and we think of these anchor themes that really guides them: environmental justice and sustainability, social justice, peace, harmony, and collaboration. And when we see this, we start to realize this is us. This is what teachers have been doing all along. So I continued on trying to get this message out, and I'd put in for conferences and have topics around this, and I maybe would have one person come to the session, which was great because then we would talk and we'd feel passionate about it. But then in 2015, something changed, and the UN, along with our entire world, came together as they knew we needed to take some immediate and urgent actions, and they created the Sustainable Development Goals. So when this framework came out, this became my roadmap. All of a sudden, and I didn't know if it was the bright colors or the icons, something about this poster alone changed everything for teachers when they saw, well, life below water, life on land, gender equality, zero hunger. This is education. We have our very own goal in SDG 4, which is quality education. So we sent out a tweet, and I remember being at a global education forum in Philadelphia, and I was there with other educators who felt the same. And I was like, these SDGs, I think this is it. And so we sent out a tweet, we tagged in the United Nations, and they responded and said, we too feel that educators and students need to be a part of this work. So about 6 weeks later, we flew to the United Nations headquarters in New York City. We were nervous, we were super scared, but we said we have to do this for our future, for the planet and for our people. So that day we got to New York City, the group there had asked us, would we be interested in being tasked as a task force to survey the scene for the next year and see if there's educators interested in this work. Of course, we said yes. We were 4 educators at the time. We knew we needed to grow and have more people represented. So we left that day with a hashtag Teach SDGs and started to spread the word. So that was in 2016. We've now grown to have over 50,000 educators worldwide who are working each day for this idea of educators and students taking action for our planet. And this idea of collective action, each of us in our little worlds and our small communities and our classrooms or schools taking action together collectively, I believe, and I love this quote here, but that we can shake the world. So how does that look in action? So we have this framework, we have teachers ready to mobilize and go. For us with Teach SDGs, the first few years really were about advocacy and awareness. And then we started to get teachers saying to us, okay, great, I get it. We need to do this work. Even if I'm one teacher in my building, I need to move forward and find ways to integrate the SDGs or the concepts of the SDGs into my daily lessons. But how do we begin? For a lot of us as teachers, that can be scary, especially when we're operating in isolation. Do we have permission to do these things? I know with things like climate education, I'm faced constantly with teachers coming to me and saying, I'm receiving resistance. I have people telling me that I can't talk about climate. I've had people pull out of our goals project because of gender equality, like things that, and this is within the United States too, that they're just not able to talk about because of pressure within their school boards or parent groups. So we had to be thoughtful in how we move forward. And as I mentioned, my inspiration comes so often from my students, and our way forward, the inspiration for that came from one of my students, as you see here, and her name is Amy. So Amy was in one of my pre-service teacher program classes, and she had sent me a message one day. She had just finished teaching her first year of kindergarten. And Amy said, tomorrow is my first day of summer, and I would love to spend it with you. May I take you to breakfast and tell you about my year? Well, as you know, we're teachers. If your student calls on you, you go. So Amy told me this story she told me a lot of stories about her year, and it had been tough. Kindergarten is tough. And so she's walking me through the whole year. And by the end of our breakfast, she goes, oh my gosh, you're going to be so excited. I did a global collaboration project. So Amy had done a project around the English letters of the alphabet, 26 letters of the alphabet. She was assigned H for hippo. So Amy with her kindergarten students learned about hippos for the year. Then via email, they sent everything they learned to the 25 other classrooms. They got emails in, learned about other alphabet letters and other animals. And she said it was magic. So feeling excited and inspired by her ideas, I left that day, 26 letters of the alphabet, 17 SDGs. Maybe I could find 16 other classrooms to come together in a global collaboration project like Amy had done. So I went home that night. I went on Canva, which if you haven't used Canva, you should definitely check it out. It's a very cool graphic design tool for novice designers. I'm definitely novice. So I created a name, the Goals Project, a free and non-professional logo. I created a website, and then I sent out a tweet the next day asking if anyone wanted to be a part of this project, just hoping we could get 16 other classrooms. So big news. It was big to me, introducing the Goals Project. I had a link. I had a Google form where teachers could sign up. And within a few weeks, we ended up having over 300 classrooms join in. By September that year, 2019, we had nearly 2,000 classrooms join in from 120 countries around the world. The Goals Project. So then every year since then, we've been able to offer this. This year, we had nearly 4,000 classrooms join in. And so what you can see here is we broke them apart by age. So we had students as young as age 3, all the way up through university. Of course, with everything we do, we're all volunteers. So we had volunteer facilitators. These are teachers that came to us and said, well, I'd love to be a part of this project, but I'm not in the classroom anymore. I'm a tech coach, or I'm a professor, or I'm an administrator. And so they led these groups. Each one had about 150 classrooms, and we broke them apart by SDG. So let me take you in here. So you can see here's our Goals Project website. And everything is accessible. So if you weren't able to participate in the project and it was something that you wanted to do later on in the year, all of the activities are here. We move them through this process of, I think it's on this page. So they're meeting the global goals because the SDGs are new for a lot of our classrooms. They were then gifted a global goal. So each classroom took one. Remember Amy with H? So this is similar. They were talking about ways to design for impact. Now they're creating something. They're making inventions. They're making advocacy campaigns. They're doing art projects. They're doing sustainability projects. Then we connected it back to our theme of environmental stewardship. Talk to them about how do you package up your solution? So if you have a great idea in your classroom, how might you share that out with the world? Talking to them about data and impact. We don't want to wait till college for them to know the words qualitative and quantitative, like happened with me. So we want them early on to know that data matters. And then we concluded with a celebration of learning. So here are some of our projects. And if you're looking for ways to get started with climate education or anything around global sustainability, these are projects from 2019. We just got our projects in for this year, so we'll be loading these up. But you'll see that not any two are the same. So everything was open-ended, everything was inquiry-based. We don't have things like step-by-step directions or rubrics. We tell the teachers, co-create with your students. Put the ownership back on them, which for a lot of our teachers was something that made them feel quite nervous. But we said, just trust in the process and see what they create. And within 6 weeks, I mean, they're creating these extraordinary solutions. And so this is an example. One of our projects we do projects all year long. And I'll share a little bit more about all of those. Our main project we do that I'm going to share a little bit more on a little bit later is the Climate Action Project. Now, as you all are committed to climate action and climate education, this might be something of interest to you as you head out. So the Climate Action Project is every fall. So we start in September and we have partners. So the Goals Project is our partnership with the United Nations. The Climate Action Project is our partnership with WWF, NASA, and the UN. And so similar to the Goals Project, we're taking students through a 6-week journey with their teachers to co-learn around ways they can take action for the planet. So with a lot of our teachers, maybe different from you all, they've never really done work in climate education. And so this is perfect for us because this is a way we can say to them, that's absolutely great, because this is an opportunity for you to be vulnerable and say that to your students, like, you know what, this is new for me, I'm learning, will you join me in as I move forward and learn about ways I can help our planet for the future. So that vulnerability becomes this invitation for students to really rise up and take the lead. So Climate Action Project, we'd love to have you join in. So I tell you that because my next story is about a friend of mine. I know who Daniel and Melanie also now know, a young man named Herman. And Herman had sent us a message, joined, he had just moved into his gap year from high school to university. He had plans to go to university this year, but with coronavirus, those plans changed. And so he was in his gap year and said, I don't want to sit around for a year and just play video games and wait. I want to take action today. Can I join with you? I'm particularly interested in environmental sciences and engineering, and I'd love to help you in any way that I can. So this was last August. So we said to Herman, fantastic, we'd love to have you with us, but really we're already set to go for our project. The curriculum's developed, we have our structure and our framework, but we'd love to have you join in any way that works. So it was like, perfect. One way I could be useful is with language translation. So we wanted to translate our curriculum into different languages. We said, we really need help with this. We're an all volunteer group. And he knew multiple languages. So he was like, great, I'll do the translations for German and for Spanish. And then he was like, well, why don't I lead the group of teachers and have them doing the other translations like Arabic and Hindi and all of, I think we ended up having 15 languages, all these different languages that our teachers could access. Romanian, interestingly enough, was our most popular translation. So Herman, an 18-year-old high school graduate in his gap year program with a specific interest in climate education, then became the leader of a group of global educators, leading them through this really quick turnaround project that we needed to have happen within about 2 weeks. So that part of the story is pretty cool. But what happened next was, in my mind, even cooler, because Herman, after the project in November, said, you know what, the project's done. I really want to move from Singapore to South Africa. And we're like, Herman, what are you thinking? You know, you have no money. You are waiting to go to the university. It's going to be in 2 semesters. What are you going to do in South Africa? And he was like, well, I am very interested in the indigenous farmers in one area. He had family who were farmers when he lived in Germany years before. And I want to go and interview them and learn from them and have them share on the practices that their generations before farmers had passed down, and learn on how we as a world can grow in response to climate change. So you see here, Herman, he found a way to make it there. He figured out a way to take the money he had earned, get a ticket. He didn't know anyone. He flew to South Africa and started to find ways to connect to farmers. And you can see here, he's not taking no for an answer. He's making it happen. These are some photos he shared with me from his travels. He's getting ready to come to the United States. He'll be studying in Colorado, which Daniel and Melanie will have to update you on that. But he's just awesome. And this is an example of what students are doing today. They are taking action. They're not waiting for schools to catch up. They're moving forward with or without us. And a lot of them are using this guidebook of the SDGs to help them along the way. So I bring back the SDGs that can help us move into this next phase of our discussion, because the SDGs, what I found, there's a place for everyone. So if I'm talking to science teachers will tell me, well, the SDGs are science. Everything about the SDGs is science. Then I'll talk to humanities teachers and they'll be like, oh, well, these SDGs, these are humanities. This is like social sciences. This is us. We own these. And then I'll talk to arts teachers who say the same. I'll talk to primary educators, secondary educators, students. Everyone can find a way to see themselves in the goals. For me, my commitment to the goals really started with SDG 4, quality education. But then I started to see SDG 17, partnership. Partnerships, really, for me, I'm connecting with people in all different industries, finding ways to have synergy, to make things happen. To SDG 17, how can I tackle quality education without partnerships? And reduce inequalities with SDG number 10. So I'm focused on equity work and diversity, inclusion, access. So SDG 10 takes the front with me too. And then finally, SDG 13, which is now the center of all of my work with Take Action Global and climate education. So I show you this path because this is over time. A few years ago, I was working mainly on SDG 4 and I identified myself there. Then I kind of started to incorporate SDG 17, SDG 10, SDG 13. I'm sure that will continue to change, but it's always about ways I can take action for our world. So we're going to kind of explore some different ways that we together with our students can take action and use this new way of thinking that you all have been working on for the past few days as a lens in which we see instructional design. So I'm going to take you to our first technology, which is called Nearpod. Now, if any of you have used Nearpod in your classroom, I love Nearpod. I know Daniel, Melanie, and I have had a lot of fun with it. Carson too, with using Nearpod for some of our activities. And we're going to explore it today, but you're going to be in the seat of the student. So if you can go to nearpod.com. And if you've used Nearpod in the past, you aren't going to go to your teacher account. You're going to go to this orange box that says students. Now you can go to nearpod.com on your desktop, or you might want to go to it on your phone. If you have a mobile device, that might be easier so you can continue to see my screen because I'm going to show you the teacher view. Nearpod.com, looking for the orange box that says students, and you're going to enter a code. All right. So our code today, which is not case sensitive, is 59SAG. 59SAG. And I'm going to head over to my Nearpod. And so what I'm able to see is this is the teacher view. If you haven't used Nearpod before, I'm able to see who's joining in. It's great for remote learning, also great in the classroom. This is the live version. You can also do it like homework mode. So I've used Nearpod for a long time, a lot of different ways. So I can see Callie's in, Jacob's in, Josh is in. Oh, everybody's coming in fast. So you're all going to be in. And so you're going to see that now our screens are tethered. So I'm going to be able, as the teacher, to move and advance our slides. So we're going to, you're going to see your slide change now that it's asked for your name. And if anyone comes in late, or if maybe you lose your connection, that 5-character code's always going to be in the upper left-hand corner of my screen. So for anyone who's not in yet, nearpod.com, and our code is 59SAG. Okay? All right. So we're going to go through this design thinking activity. I love doing this because it really models for me as a teacher in an activity where I don't know our end result. I don't know our final answer. I think this is the type of like best instructional practice that I can do with a student, with a class of students, because if I know what I think my correct answer is in the end, my students are constantly trying to find that answer that I have that anticipated for them. Here, I don't know. We're going to co-create it together, and we're going to go through this thinking process to find our solutions. So our first board, and this is a Nearpod Collaborate board, so it's like a sticky board, and we can put our ideas up, so we'll all have visibility into everyone's thinking. Everyone has a say. Everyone in the room is included. And so our first question is for us to think on a future innovation. So I'd like for you to think ahead like 10, 15 years. Remember, we're in that ideation phase now. So we went from inspiration to ideation. So this is messy, zany ideas count. Anything goes. So if you have two ideas, one or two ideas of a future innovation, something that we can anticipate being invented in about 10 to 15 years, and go ahead and use that white box at the bottom to add your ideas. And so add in future innovations that we can anticipate in about 10 to 15 years. And then once you add those up, we'll start to see those populate on our board. Now I'm thinking. Here they come. All right, so Naveen says artificial intelligence. Jessica, more solar powered items, trying to get rid of the world of batteries. Majority of vehicles, energy efficient water, desalination through improved PV solar power. Michael says cleaner energy. Carson, VR tech to deliver skills-based content like small engine repair that connects remotely to robotic tools. Very cool. Arlie says more effective alternative energy. We have Danny, I think, with remote teaching content experts. Majority of vehicles operated via autopilot. Easy and common used tire recycling. Other types of light batteries besides lithium ion. All right, so our ideas are starting to come in. Future innovations, that's something we may see invented in 10 to 15 years. Okay, so here's where we're going to take this activity, and it goes back into your hands. So I'm going to gift you with one vote. So this is if you've done anything around crowdsourcing or upvoting, this is an upvoting activity. So you all get to select where we go next. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure. So with your gifted one vote, you'll see there's hearts, and you can go in, read these, and I'd like you to select one that you think we should move into discussing more. You don't have to have any knowledge of it. I won't put anyone on the spot. So if it's more technical, then that's okay. If it's something interesting to you, then go ahead and select that heart. So once you make your selection, I'm going to show you, I'll give you maybe 10 seconds to make your selection. And then what we're able to do within Nearpod, and if you're looking at my screen on the teacher side, is I can put our responses in order by chronological order, which is what we're in right now. So Naveen was the first sticky note to be posted, and then moving on chronologically. I can put them in ABC order based on author, but today we're going to put them in order of likes. So you all have now voted. And so I'll put them in order of likes. And we have a tie. So we have VR tech to deliver skills. Oh, it's moving up. Okay, we have Rachna with recycling wastewater. So I'm going to put here on my paper, our innovation for the future is recycling waste water. We had some close second place there too. Okay, so now kind of get your mind thinking about recycling wastewater, this future innovation, something that we're going to see in about 10 to 15 years. Okay, Now I'm going to advance our slide. So you're going to see this go away. So don't be surprised. And now we're going to think about this innovation and what are the jobs associated with a team that may need to create our new innovation of recycling waste water. So think about that and add in maybe 2 or 3 jobs that will be associated with this innovation. Who will be on that team to invent this? Gets a little easier now. So we'll have an engineer, a plumber, a chemist, a biologist, an architect, computer programmers, mechanical engineers. I bet we'll have lots of engineers on this technology. Homeowners, great, yes. Ditch diggers. You start to think about all the people that might be a part of this innovation for the future of recycling waste water. So we have a technician, an epidemiologist, a landscape architect, scientists, climatologists, all are going to be a part of these teams. Educators, woohoo, Christina, bringing educators into the mix. Transport. So there's going to be so many jobs that are going to need to be associated with this single innovation that's coming to our future. Dairy farmers, GIS specialists, marketing teams to make recycled water look good. We'll need that, right, Kristen? Quality control specialists. So we're going to need tons of people to invent this. I mean, this is just one innovation. We had 20 on that first slide, and if we had time, we'd probably think of 200 more. So all of these new jobs that the students who are working with in our classrooms today are going to be preparing for. Okay? All right, so now I'd like you to take that one vote again, and I'd like you to look at all of these ideas and use your one vote to pick one career, one job associated with our innovation of recycling wastewater, and go ahead and make your selection on one job you'd like to select for us to think on. Okay. All right, go ahead and put them in order by likes and you can keep voting. So we have homeowners, engineers, marketing teams taking the lead. All right, so looks like engineers is going to be the job we go with. And we had a lot of engineers. So I think in engineering, we had different types of engineers get other votes. So let's go with engineers. So we are going to think about this job of an engineer, that this engineer is going to be a part of a team, probably with all of these different specialists to recycle wastewater and create this innovation for the future. So we're going to move to the next slide. And now we're going to think about the impact of climate change on this job specifically. So what will engineers in 10 to 15 years need to be thinking about compared to maybe today? So what will the impact of climate change be on this job? And you can even think about on this innovation. So we're going to have to start to think about an emphasis on cleaner energy. So there might be dried up aquifers. We'll be dealing with more extreme events, using the smallest amount of land. So we're going to see climate change impacting jobs. I'm sure if we would have picked any of those other jobs too, they would have had their own impacts. Water scarcity due to more extreme climate and drought. Fights for water, contaminated watersheds, conservation of resources. So this impact on climate change, not only on the cause for the solution that we need to be thinking on innovating and inventing, but really on the job itself. Curriculum changes, updates for engineering courses, emphasis on water retention, efficiency for water use, a depleting non-renewable resource. Traditional materials may not be available, adapting how they design and plan, and sustainable material sources. Okay, I think, and probably after the work you all have done this year, and definitely over the past few days, you could probably have lots of ideas here, just to add in the last 3. Types of engineering, media and tools, plastics and metals, floods from extreme weather events, contaminating clean water, moving potable water to population, and then flooding impact on efficiency of recycling water. Very cool. Can you imagine if we were able to take this board and make these into lessons for our students? So our last board is, now we're going to bring it back to our students. And if you think about one student you've had in your classroom this past year, picture that student, and that young man or young woman comes to you and says, you know what? I can see into the future. I am going to be an engineer, and this is the innovation I am going to create. I'm going to be a part of a team. We are going to be having impacts of climate change on our work, and I need to be prepared. What are the skills that we need to be building in our classrooms today to be preparing that student for his or her future? So go ahead and add those skills in. And as you think about them, think about your lesson plans. Are our lesson plans supporting these skills? If we were able to see into that crystal ball and know of all of those futures our students will be having, would we make a change? And I'm sure all of us here definitely believe in the importance of bringing climate education into our classrooms. But things like the engineering design process, data analysis, technical math, communication, calculus, critical thinking, getting a lot of love here, problem solving skills, systems thinking. I've been doing a lot with systems thinking too, Carson, for communicating with stakeholders, project-based learning, research skills, collaboration skills with colleagues to help with design. Which is, I mean, so much of what we see out in the workforce today. Everyone's ideas matter. Adapting to a dynamic environment, record keeping skills. Even going back to our post we had earlier about marketing, and I shared with you, that's what we do with the Goals Project. If you have these ideas and you have these solutions happening, how do you effectively communicate that out to others? Global outlook. So I'll be able to grab these boards when we move into our next activity a little bit later. I'll grab the links to these boards so you'll have access to all of these ideas. Something that I've been trying to do more is return back to any type of collaborative activity I do like this, return back to these, use this as data, take this to other groups and say, you know what, I worked with this group a couple of months ago and we came up with these ideas. How might we bring these ideas into the work we're doing here at a local level? So this can be data to help arm you when you're going back to your schools and trying to make the case for the things you care about. If it's climate education, if it's environmental justice, whatever that might look like. I think we had a few more come in here. Experiential learning, I believe in that so much. Portfolio building, so lots of ideas here for our skills to build. All right, so you got moving a little bit on our Nearpod. We're going to head back over to our slide deck and keep things moving. Great, so that was our Nearpod activity. So let's get back to our students, and I'd love to share some examples of students who have had teachers that really empowered them to upvote their own learning experiences. So teachers who have done similar things to what we just did with this activity and really put it back on them and said, well, where do you want to go with this? What are your big goals and ideas and dreams on how we might make a difference in our world? And how might we do that as well? So I'm framing it here around climate education, and you all are in the business of climate education. This is your passion and work too. And so what I've seen with climate education that's been fascinating and also fun is that we as teachers in this space right now, we're helping to design what climate education is. So really, it's this blank line for us to figure out together with our colleagues, with each other, with our students, what climate education looks like. Now, for me and the work that I do, I'm all about action. I'm all about getting students to create, to build, to engage, to collaborate. So climate education isn't just taking a textbook and having students read about what's happening with the climate crisis. It's actually having them do something. Now, there's also a lot of research, which you probably have talked about this week, in that climate education or climate change work really can be paralyzing depending on your approach. So if you're constantly talking about the bad, the gloom and doom, then that can be a very paralyzing effect for our young people when they start to think, well, how can I, just one person, possibly make a difference? Something that we also see in education, when I talk to teachers and they'll say, but how can I, one person, possibly make a difference in this huge, massive machine of education? Though teachers are like, but this is wrong and this is broken and this needs help. But that's kind of back to my point of collectively, if we all take small actions, together we can make big change. Climate education is. So I'm going to share just some themes that I've been noticing the past few years that keep me inspired and hopeful. So climate education is collaborative. And this is an example of a classroom that I worked with, really was just invited to witness, truly, down in South Florida. And so this is a 6th grade group of 6 students and an after school club. And they're growing vegetables. A lot of our schools are doing this, doing awesome things. And they were supplying their cafeterias. I took notice because I had done that in my K-12 program as well. And I thought that it was quite empowering. And so these students, they had come up with this on their own. This wasn't a part of a class. They cared about this. They had come to the teacher and said, we want to do this. Can we do an after school club? She was all in. And she really just was a facilitator. So she was a help desk for them as they built this program up. So they had said, well, what we're doing is really working in our school. We'd love to find a way to share out what we've learned with other classrooms. So they brought in experts, something back to that SDG 17 all around partnership. So that's why they had me come in to talk to them about ways to use social media to get the word out about the work they were doing. So you'll see here, this is us joining together. They had made a website and they were creating these tutorial videos for others to engage with. They all had different roles, so it wasn't a one-size-fits-all type of program. As students designed, they picked things they cared about, that they wanted to grow in, skills they felt that they had expertise in. So you see things here like actor, photographer. I think it's super cool that these young people know what a PSA is, so a PSA actor, script writer. So they all have responsibilities. So then they got this idea of what they were doing locally. How could they connect that to the world in a more interactive way? So not just creating videos and hoping someone watches them, but what if, and this is 2 years ago before coronavirus, when Zoom became a common activity for us, they said, what if we were able to have video conferencing with schools from different parts of the world? They created a Google form. They started to spread the news. They started to have several classrooms come in from the United States. You see here, these are the ones in the US. Then they grew beyond the borders of our country and started collaborating with global classrooms. And cool enough, at the end, so this was a couple of years ago, they put in for this eco challenge with Lexus and they were awarded $30,000. So they were able to take that money and build on what they had been doing. Here, just to point out, so it didn't stop there with the teacher. And so next year, you see her, she's in red. Next year, she had a whole new group of students come to her and the Food Miles Matter group kept going. But this group came and said, well, we're interested in doing something too, but we care about mangroves. And if you've ever been in South Florida, mangroves, or really in Florida in general, we love mangroves. And so they wanted to find ways to do similar projects, but around mangroves. I love this. I took a screen capture because when they met with me to interview me, they wanted to make sure I felt that my needs were being met. So they started the conversation saying, here's what we have planned for our call today. Is this what you expected? Is there anything else you'd like to learn? So I felt a little bit put on the spot and I was like, well, I'd love to see into like your mangroves that you're growing. And so then they took me on a tour that was unexpected. But here, they wanted to make sure I had access. They probably didn't realize they were doing this, but for me, someone that's all about accessibility, they held up this sign. They're like, be sure to follow us on Twitter, be sure to follow us on Instagram, be sure to follow us on Facebook, and let us know if you have any questions. So, I mean, these kids are brilliant marketers. Like I'm learning from them. So climate education is collaborative. Next story, climate education is optimistic. So I have a story from you from a recent project we just did. It was called the Rethink Plastics Challenge. So I talked to you about the Goals Project and the Climate Action Project. We did a mini project here around plastics. And this was in May, just last month. We moved students. This was a smaller project. We had 500, maybe we had about 800 classrooms in the end join in. We guided them through thinking about plastics around history and production, considerations and uses, solutions, and of course, ending with action always. We had one classroom in Belgium join in, and this classroom I've taken a particular interest in because this is a classroom for children who are refugees. I had no idea. My small, singular view in Florida and growing up here, working here, only traveling abroad just a small number of times, I had no idea there was such a large population of refugees in Belgium. And so a friend of mine who's become a great friend through the work around global collaboration, she's been bringing these projects to students that she teaches in her refugee classes. And so the students she had for this project, they had never heard the word recycling. They didn't even know it mattered. They didn't know it meant anything. It didn't even have a translation for them in their native languages. So they were like, wait, we could have been doing this all along. So they were instantly intrigued. They started to, again, very little resources with these students. And this teacher has pretty much no resources. She has no computers, no devices. She has her own phone that she uses. So they had to figure out a way always to do projects. So these kids took it on. They said, we are going to collect as many bottle caps as we can. So they're learning English. They're learning Dutch and English, but they're all speaking different languages because they're coming from different parts of the world as refugees. And so you see here, wonderful language activity of colors, and they're doing sorting, and they're counting, and they're collecting, and they're working together for a purpose. So they're collecting these bottle caps. And what they did next is super cool. So these students live in a refugee camp that has 60 children total. Now, they don't have any games. They have to make up their own games. So these young people said, we're going to make them games, and they're going to be able to take them and play and learn. And most of them aren't in school. Only some of them get to go to school. So they'll be able to learn. So you see them here, they're building out their games, which are super clever and creative. I mean, they look like games I would buy for my own children at the store, which are, I just think, beautiful. They created a logo because they too are awesome marketers. They then had a problem. So they realized soon that the glue that they were using, their little games were falling apart. So it wasn't a sustainable practice. So they needed to find a way to make a solution. So Nian said, well, how about I take it to my network on social media and I'll create a GoFundMe. And so she worked with her students to create this GoFundMe campaign where they could raise money to then, you talk about empathy in the classroom and social emotional learning, refugee children building for other refugee children and using the world to help them with their work. So climate education is optimistic. And then the last one here, actually, I think I have two more or one more. Climate education isn't within reach. So something else I hear a lot with our teachers is, well, climate education really doesn't, pertain to me. I don't have the access to resources that I need. I have all of these barriers. And so climate education and even work around social good, social justice, as I mentioned in the beginning, is not necessarily something that's within the comfort zone of a lot of teachers. So when I approach that with teachers, a lot of times it's easy for us to think of this problem solution type of needs-based way of thinking, which is very Western. So if you have a problem, you solve it. It's also based on a lot of privilege as well. So if I have a problem, I solve it, and I can think I can solve it because I have the resources that I need to do that. But what if you don't have the skills? What if you don't have the resources? So this focused on deficiency or this traditional view of education, so you start to kind of bring this in for us, this focus on people as consumers of services, so traditional educational practices from an industrial age. We had children kind of being poured knowledge into by their teachers. They're consumers. And then the community members observe as issues are being addressed. But what if we reframe it and we think of it as an asset-based approach? So this comes from really community development. So towns and cities that are developing at a systems level. So this flips it. So instead of focusing on deficiencies, we're focusing on effectiveness. We're focusing on the people as producers. They're taking action. And those community members, who for us are our students, or maybe our teachers or our parents, they participate and they are empowered. Here, everyone has gifts. Everyone has something to contribute. And this final point, I think, really important for us, everyone cares about something, and that passion becomes their motivation to act, which is where you all are today with this level of taking action. So we're going to spend our last bit of time together taking action, creating a plan on how we move forward. And we're going to think together as a group and moving through something that I call Success Island. So with Nearpod, we moved through boards. We're going to move through thinking today too. And we're going to start with Success Island. So as you're leaving the event, you all have been here all week thinking, getting all these new ideas. You've been in that inspiration phase. Right now, you're probably starting to move into the ideation phase. How do you glean some of these ideas and put them into the practices you already have in play in your local schools? So what does success look like? If you were to be able to envision this island out in the distance, and what does success, if we've implemented all of these activities and practices and we're able to achieve climate education successfully in our schools, what does success look like? So we're going to break into our breakout groups, and I'm going to give you all about 5 minutes to think about what success looks like. And you can add up those ideas with this Padlet board. So I'm going to come off here and I might need to share. Let's see in the chat. Daniel maybe beat me to it. I think I'm going to maybe be. I see him working. So we have a link for you, and then we're going to send you out to think together on Success Island. Okay. Daniel, I think I got it. So close. I'll get you next time. Okay, so about 4 minutes over in Success Island. Well, maybe let's do 5 for the first one. 5 minutes, think together, what does Success Island look like? If we effectively implement climate education in our classroom and find ways to take action. So have fun, good luck in your breakout group. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. So let's go over here.
I got scared for a minute. Success Island didn't have look like a lot was going on.
You're like, what's going on? Success Island. I know. Success Island is growing. So welcome back. I know, so sorry about the Padlet board of success. We didn't have success in the beginning of Success Island not being editable. So just wanted to bring you back. Thinking about Success Island really quickly here. And so I see group 1 has some ideas listed out. So if we have successfully implemented our plan, our ideas, if we moved into that implementation phase, because remember that roller coaster keeps going. It's never like, okay, we did it. But we would have renewable resources put to use for educational, residential, or other uses. We would have sustainable use of resources. We would have classrooms with net zero emissions. How about that? We would have collaboration. We would be sustainable. We'd have students who are engaged, maybe also teachers part of that conversation. Active student input, growth mindset, classroom level environmental innovation. Anything else, any of the groups, anyone want to turn their mic on? Anything we haven't added to our board here for Success Island? Any themes that came up? Something that you're just like burning idea that you're like, wait a minute, Success Island has to have this in it. I would love to hear from you before we go to our next board.
I would just say, like, we were talking about an interesting thing that I don't feel like has been talked much, like during this event as a whole, which was just like fertilizer runoff, chemical runoff, and how that like goes into the ocean and takes away the oxygen because it causes the plants to grow big and use all that. And so I was just thinking of a way we were talking about kind of like our kids, because we're not really, you know, down there at the Gulf Coast, but kind of how we contribute to the issue.
Yeah.
And just a way to kind of simulate that, having some sort of way to simulate that so they see their impact, even though they can't like be at the Gulf Coast necessarily to see the end result.
I love it. Well, and then like the ways that I mean, that's all perspective taking. So if you're saying this isn't necessarily something we're seeing here, but maybe we bring in other students to share about the impact they are seeing. I know we, of course, in Florida are talking about this, seeing this. So maybe it's a co-created project and maybe you're creating for others, which is, I mean, like the best thing you can do. So I think that idea of, again, those small steps and taking small actions, light bulb a day, an engaged community, a group of forward-thinking people. All right, so now we've kind of started to think about Success Island. We could spend probably an hour building out Success Island. So it's in the distance. You can see it. You want to get there. Now, we are on a boat. We are here all together with class. Picture us, we're not in our Zoom rooms. We're on a boat. We're heading to Success Island. We've just had these 3 days. You're like ready to go. You're energized. You have your people, you have your ideas, and something is holding you back. So start to think about those anchors. What is holding you back from reaching Success Island? So we're going to go back into our room. All right, group 1, group 2, group 3, welcome back. All right.
I think
we
we
had
have some
anchors.
groups that just like talking more than they like typing is what I'm guessing here.
Right? They're like, wait, we haven't had a chance to put our ideas up. Arlie's like, yep. All right. So anchors, oftentimes, I've done this activity a couple times now, become a lot easier than some of the other boards. So anchors, we have energy needed, politics, money, resistance to change. That's a big one. School support, time, always number one, right? Preconceived bias, limited resources, required standards. Always doing what we've always done, not willing to try new things. We're starting to see some overlap between our group here. Standardized assessments, unique local needs, lack of time. So if we were to like affinity map this, I think we'd be like, all right, we have time, we have responsibility, we have resources, including money, resistance to change. That's some big buckets here for our anchors that are pulling us back. We see Success Island in the distance. Okay, so our third board here, we're going to together find the when. So we're going to push past those anchors. We're now equipped with all sorts of ideas. We have the people to help us do it. We're going to break into a group for 4 minutes for this final breakout of how might we find the when to get to Success Island. Getting everyone back in here. I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so this is my favorite board. So find the wind as you all are coming back in. So, and I've been given permission to go a little bit over time. So I'm excited to have a couple more minutes with you all to conclude here today. So always wanting to leave off with, remember, climate education is optimistic. So how can we find the wind to move forward? We got to reach that Success Island. And I know we are a persistent bunch, and we're not going to let those anchors hold us back. I love being an educator and working with educators because we will find a way. I think that was shown in this pandemic, like, oh, well, watch out. Teachers know what to do. They're just going to fight their way through all this. So find a win. Education, leading right there. I love that. Technology, ag supports in the area, region, global, which you have those here with this group. Law enforcement, game wardens, international organizations, there's so many out there to support us. Grant opportunities, actions teams, task forces, parents, advisory committees, universities, grants. So there's things to help us along the way. I know for me, it's just about time. Like, how do we move forward when we have all of these great resources in front of us and find the time to do that? So what I would encourage you to do, and I have a couple of things as we conclude here today, is we need to sail together. So you have this group right here. You've been together for the past few days. I mean, how amazing is it that class brings people who are like-minded, who are already committed, who are raising their hand, coming together for this commitment to climate education. So you just need to set sail together, lock arms, and move forward. So Success Island is very much in reach, I think, if we can do it together. And so that's the work that I'm doing. Let me minimize us so I can see my buttons here. So climate education is us all. And so it doesn't matter if we're ag teachers or if we're literacy teachers like me, we all have this responsibility, and we're going to start seeing this more and more. We have states like New Jersey that are mandating climate education. We have other states that are following. I predict in the next 5 years, we're going to have the United States all on board moving forward for climate education. So for me, taking action isn't enough. It's great that we've moved from consumption to curation to creating to take an action, but we have to do it by design. We have to do that from the moment we're talking about creating and building this in. We have to do it by design. I'm only going to touch on this for just a minute, but I wanted to leave you with this framework that I use, which is theory of change. And so if you've done anything around theory of change, you'll see here, there's this input, there's activities, there's outcomes, there's impact. And I use this, I shared with you in the beginning. If we think about the SDGs, for me, SDG 4, SDG 10, 17, 13, this is what I'm working around. I'm working around virtual exchange. So I take that theory of change and map it out. So I see global youth, those are my people. And if we can engage them in a shared positive experience through things like experiential learning, use of technology, innovative teaching practice, access for me, ideas, information, opportunities, then we'll start to see changes in attitudes, beliefs, and behavior, for ultimately us to get to these sustainable actions and solutions. Our students today as active, engaged citizens. So everyone here is going to have a different theory of change as you're moving forward. But if you take this, map it out according to what matters to you in your classroom, and then you think about this sphere of influence. So let me back up. You see that end part, that sphere of influence, that ripple effect. Here I call it a multiplier effect. So the students we're working with today, the messages you send to them around climate or environmental justice or around anything you care about, that is going to spread across time, across location, and across people. So I'd love to end with Climate Action Project. We'd love to have you involved with us. Crazy enough, we just talked to the Philippines. My partner, Koen Temmers, he's in Belgium. And yesterday he was like, okay, I didn't have my glasses on yet. He has early morning meetings because he's across the world. He's like, I met with the Philippines. And they have what I thought said 2.7 million students who are going to be joining us. And I was like, 2.7 million students? We have 2.6, that's double. And he goes, no, not 2.7, 27. So we're going to be having 27 million students joining our project next year. So we'd love to have you and your students joining in as well. Sky's the limit. We can do this together. And I'm so honored to have been invited here to be with you today. And I'd love to keep that conversation going. So if you are on social media, I'm using hashtags like Teach SDGs, Teach Boldly, Take Action EDU. You can take a screenshot of this. I'm Jen Williams EDU across social media. Please feel free to send me an email. And I am absolutely locked arm in arm with you on this mission to make a difference for our world. So thank you all. Thank you to Daniel and Melanie and Carson for welcoming me into this world of ag. I always listen to say that agricultural sciences, I'm like the groupie learning and like, I just want to go back to school and learn more. So this little literacy girl here from Florida is trying to figure it out. So you're all so patient with me, and thanks for welcoming me in.
Well, Jennifer, you did a great job. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. It's a great way to think about where we can go and what we can do. Huh, Rash?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. This was great. We really enjoyed it. And I'm sure there's been a lot of connections with this and so much information. I'm still soaking it in. It's wonderful. Thank you for this excellent information. So our next event for today is actually the most interesting and one of the most, I'm really looking forward to it, because now our attendees, our participants, our educators are going to share with us some lightning presentations, which is basically they're sharing what they came up with as a group yesterday after the workshop session. So very excited to hear that. But I think before that, we are going to take a short break for a couple minutes and just take a little break, just get ready for that. And then Carson is going to guide us through the logistics of the lightning presentations. But again, thank you so much for this wonderful morning session. This has been awesome.